yeah, I needed someone to disciple me because we all should have someone discipling us and we should all be discipling someone. We all need a Paul, we all need a Timothy. And so I reached out to 5 different women in the community who were pillars in the church, pillars in the community. They were known for, teaching and having large group Bible studies and stuff. And I asked all 5, if they would disciple me, and I got crickets.
Punky, I know you and Carmen go back a long way, deep friendship and everything like that. But I mean, you realize that Carmen's like a farm bride, right? I was going to just show you an image. I found a portrait of Carmen and Jim out on the internet. And I was just wondering what you thought of this.
Wait a second.
If you had said what you would have, that's exactly what I would have guessed.
Hello, everyone. Dennis Allen. Welcome to the Disciple Dilemma. We have 2 very powerful women on the podcast today. Punky Tolson, who in Dallas, Texas, is doing a great job with Life on Life with Punky Tolson. She's been an actress. She is working one-on-one with a lot of women. She's part of the Tolson group, a lot of discipleship happening with that beautiful crowd. We're going to listen to her talk to us today about her experiences in one-on-one and walking along in life with people. And also with us, Carmen LaBerge, the Reconnect with Carmen on Faith Radio, author, podcaster. Carmen is with us too, talking about women. We're talking about discipleship. We're talking about disciple making. This is a great conversation.
As we talk about discipleship, and of course the podcast, The Disciple Dilemma, is really trying to have a conversation with leaders saying, do you have a clue? Do you really understand how hard it is? People have never been exposed to the kinds of things that Carmen and Punky are talking about. Do you really understand that your church is a marvelous gymnasium? And it's great to work out in the gym, but people don't understand there's a door over there that goes out on the playing field.
Well, let's break that tradition of staying in the gym and not getting out on the playing field. And these 2 ladies, Punky and Carmen, are going to help us untangle that problem as we talk about who are you withing with. Here we go.
Folks, welcome to the Disciple Dilemma. We have on the show today an actress, 2 authors, an academic from Princeton, the radio host of The Reconnect on Faith Radio, 2 women who do a lot of work for Christ. They're heavy lifters. They may not look like they are ready to go on the Terminator, but they definitely theologically are heavyweights, and we want to talk to both of them about this today. So I'm going to start out by welcoming our very first time guest, Punky, who is also on her birth certificate known as Karen Tolson, to the Disciple Dilemma. Welcome, Punky.
Thank you very much. I think you oversold me as a theologian, but thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're looking forward to exploring life with Punky Tolson, right? The Life on Life podcast. That'll be great. And returning, which I think her publicity team is telling her is not in her best interests, Carmen LaBerge, who has always helped us make a better lift and a better play on the Disciple Dilemma. Carmen, thanks for being with us again today.
Absolutely. It's my joy.
We got together and chatted a month ago, ladies, and you guys actually grabbed the reins and took off with what we're going to talk about, which is who are you withing with? And so before we unpack that, I just want to ask both of you this question. Do either of you consider yourselves to be a trad wife?
So I'll confess that in the conversation that we had here a month ago, that was one of the terms that you used. And I knew I had heard it, but it's not a term that I had familiarized myself with, really. Like, that's just not a term that comes up at all in the conversations that I'm having. And so then after considering it, I thought to myself, okay, here's the challenge that I face in answering this question. Are there a lot of things that I do that would line up with the description of a trad wife? Yeah. I mean, I cook. I love to cook. I manage our household. I care for my husband, our children, and our grandchildren. I show hospitality. Our door is open. There is always a place at the table. I make sure the guest room is ready. Like, I am the person who's always saying, we have a proper guest room. Like it. And so if if those are the marks and the qualities of a trad wife, then I suppose I am one. Would anybody who knows me use that term to describe me? I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say hell no on your podcast, but like, no, like they just wouldn't. They would be like, what? So I think that if you're using the term to describe um the choices that I make to joyfully be in a submitted marriage, then I guess I am one. Do I have a very full, robust, fulfilling life where I feel like my gifts, talents, and abilities are all used, and my husband absolutely 100% not only supports but contributes to all of that? Yes, absolutely. So, Punky, I'll pitch to you with that question.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again, Dennis, for having me on. I, like you, Carmen, had not heard that term before. And I guess I really have never thought of myself as a traditional anything. And I'm not saying that with any kind of bragging, but just I've never really felt like I've done anything the traditional way. Like you, Carmen, I would say, as far as my marriage goes, yes, I'm submissive to my husband. He is the head of our home. I fall in line biblically with what the Bible lays out for a wife and what a husband-wife relationship looks like. I do tend to the home fires and all that comes with the domestic side of our home. I do have some help in the home from time to time to help keep it clean, because there's a whole nother aspect of my role as a wife in supporting John in his ministry. And not only do I support him and submit to that and come under him with strength, I also work alongside him in ministry. So that right there is not the typical. It wasn't in the case of his first marriage either, but I come alongside him to support what he's doing with the Lord, but also to work alongside in that same capacity of ministry outside of the home, vocational ministry. That's really what we do, is vocational ministry. So I do all of those things, much like Carmen. I teach, speak, write, all of those things, and disciple women. So there's that part of it, and I am 100% happy, satisfied, content in being a submissive wife. But my husband, I will say, is the one who has set me free to do what God has called me to do. I had a young woman say to me one time, "Oh, marriage just sounds so constricting, and oh my goodness, you'll never be able to be free again to do the things that you want to do." And I said, that contraire, Pierre, no, that is not the case. I have more freedom now. And my husband, being a godly man, has fanned the flame of my gifting and encouraged me to go and do what God has called me to do. And so I don't think that's always, typical even in a ministry marriage. But so anyway, that's what I would add to that.
I can just expect to hear some of the comments that will fling in here from some of the non-trads who do weigh in on the show from time to time. And I just want to mention something to all of you women who may never have thought about the word submissive or submit in the New Testament Greek. It's eupotasso, and the term actually means a battle formation operating in good order. It does not mean doormat. And these women, neither of them, I can assure you, I've watched them. They are not any of that. They are battle formations in good order. What in the world did you two mean by withing, as it contextually fits with disciples of Jesus Christ? Who wants to pitch the ball, since I was sort of just watching in wonder as you began withing and with?
That was the term that you pitched out, Carmen, that I loved so much, because I kind of say that all the time. I'm like, well, duh, that's it. Like, who are you with? Who are you with in a discipling relationship? And I love that. I love that, Jesus is our Emmanuel with us, and God is all about being with his people. And that whole withness of God permeates everything in the gospel. And so it makes perfect sense that in disciple making, Jesus, actually in one of the gospels, I think maybe it's Mark, where he says, and he called those he wanted to be with him.
The reality is, if somebody's not with me to see how I respond or react to my children, my grandchildren, my parents, my neighbors, my friends, my enemies, people who disagree with me, people, my colleagues, like, right, you have to be with somebody to really know them. And if we're going to disciple, if we're going to be in discipling relationships, there is time, not just in Bible study or not just at church, quote unquote, but there is really time with each other. You think about Jesus bringing the disciples with him. It's not like he said, okay, I'm calling you to be my disciples, but you can stay at home and periodically I'll pass through town and we'll touch base, we'll check in, or, I'll mail it to you. I'll send you a letter from time to time and that will give you some instructions. No, I mean, they needed to be with him so that the pattern of their life could become like him, so that their character could become like his, so that they could walk together. I mean, the image there of being yoked to Christ. Like, are you with me? Like, do you fit literally under the same shawl or stole that the rabbi would wear? Are you standing close enough to him that he can cast that over your shoulder so that you can be with him? You can literally learn to walk step for step with Jesus at his pace, the pace of grace, in the direction that he wants to go, even scary places like Samaria. I mean, like all the things that we know the disciples experienced because they were with Jesus. Now, just because you went along with him, come to find out at the end of his life, not everybody that traveled around with him was really with him. So there's layers of witness, because we find out at the end that Judas was never really with him.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the group, but there wasn't total buy-in there. He did not receive and accept Jesus for who he really was, and he never became a genuine disciple, a person who would go on to make other disciples. If that's how we sort of evaluate whether or not you are a disciple, have you made a disciple? That's sort of the evidence that this thing is working generation to generation in terms of discipleship. So that's some of the that's some of the things that come to mind when I think of discipleship as a process of being with one another as each of us is with Jesus.
So, Punky, let me ask this question. We were joking around about the trad wife a minute ago. Let's switch over to the trad life of most disciples in the West today. You've interacted with a lot of women over the years. In fact, I think you actually have a story about your initial attempts as you got to Dallas to try to have somebody come with you, ahead of you perhaps. And you can recount that story. How'd that go? How is the traditional disciple that you're encountering's withing going out there? What do you experience as you meet these people?
I was 46. I had been teaching Bible study for a while, been married to John for a couple of years, and I had started discipling women on a certain level. But what I found was a lot of women from the group that I was teaching would come to me afterwards and want to know more. They'd say, I know how the Bible works. I can find, or I know what the Bible says, and I can find the answer and fill in the blank, but I don't know how the Bible works in my everyday life. I don't know how this following Jesus makes a difference when my world is falling apart. So I started spending more one-on-one time with women, helping them walk out their faith and figuring out, like, this is what the scripture says to go and bear much fruit that will last, for instance, and this is what it looks like in your everyday life. So that came to an end in Orlando because we moved to Dallas for ministry. And when we got here, John had lived here for a while in the 70s for 4 years. And he said, there's some great women in this church where we're going to be. And any one of them would be great women to disciple you. And at 46, being in ministry, being married, yeah, I needed someone to disciple me because we all should have someone discipling us, and we should all be discipling someone. We all need a Paul, we all need a Timothy. And so I reached out to 5 different women in the community who were pillars in the church, pillars in the community. They were known for, teaching and having large group Bible studies and stuff. And I asked all 5, if they would disciple me, and I got crickets. Not one person said, I don't feel qualified to disciple you. So I thought, okay, maybe they don't understand what I'm looking for. I want someone to come alongside me and help me walk it out. I'm a newlywed. I need help there. I'm new into ministry as a married woman. And so I got crickets. So I thought, okay, this is something that's lacking here. And so maybe just haven't found the right people. But as far as the community where I am, the place where God's planted me here, I need to start helping women do this. And if I can't find someone to help me, then I just need to be the woman I wish someone would be to me. And I figured it out. My husband was a great resource. At the time, he was writing the book that we use called The 4 Priorities, that give me like a guideline, just something to follow. But my heart really went out to women who I saw in church in multiple Bible studies throughout the week and would say they were being discipled. And yes, that is discipling on some level. But what we're talking about, being with someone, withing with someone, and being the kind of disciple that Jesus is talking about in Matthew 28, where he says, now you disciples that I've been with for 3.5 years, now you go make disciples and be with them and baptize, teach, and all these things. And that was deeper for me. That was something deeper than just go to a Bible study, go through all of these books of the Bible and you've been discipled, or go to a program and you've been discipled. There's something that only happens, like Carmen was saying earlier, there's something that only happens when you are one-on-one with someone, or maybe one-on-two, but really that one-on-one relationship. That is what's missing. And that's what I still don't see happening a lot where I am. So I've prayed, and the Lord's brought me women. I've prayed for younger women, older women, just women that I can pour my life into and be with and help them and raise them up so that they can do the same thing, but help navigate life through God's word.
Carmen, what do you see with the trad life of disciples out there? You've been in the ministry world for quite a while. What do you see?
I really appreciate the distinction that Punky made about education, Christian education, and discipleship. I do think we have a lot of offerings. There's a lot of things being offered. There are a lot of courses you can take. There are a lot of programs you can participate in. There are a lot of resources out there, and yet what we're talking about is what does that look like? What does an integrated Christian life look like for us, for an American woman who is going to be fully expressing all of her gifts, talents, and abilities in the family and in the home and outside of the home as well. Like this is about being the disciple that Christ has called you to be, whatever that looks like, wherever you are. And so I think that as the places where God has invited me to come alongside him and what he's doing in the world. So that's been a lot of different places and therefore a lot of different contexts. And so my sister will say, you just keep reinventing yourself. And I don't see it that way. I think that I am a disciple who is just totally making the most of every opportunity that God opens or invites me into. And so I'm doing that in relationships as well. Like Punky, I I I didn't have people who positively responded to my asking them to disciple me. And so I now say yes to they're mostly young women, but there are a few older women now that it comes to mind now that Punky said it that way. Um, I say yes to any woman who wants to have coffee, have lunch, get together, go for a walk, do, at least the first time, because I want to explore what she wants, why she's asking, what she's looking for. And invariably, people want to be discipled. They don't know how to ask for it, but Christian women are craving this. They very much want it. And so, I have a couple of women on my street. I have a couple of women in my wider like little town. I have people who I have met through my actual work. I have a couple of people who I've met through my local church. I mean, on and on. Like, right, that's how this works.
Carmen, here goes Punky again. She's trying to load me up. I need help here. I'm just trying to be a good Christian, go to church, put some money in the offering plate, check in on a Bible study once every couple of months, whether I need to or not. Help me untangle this woman who's trying to put pressure on me. I'm feeling microaggressed against on my resume for Christianity. What's your thought here?
Dennis, you have permission to stop all of that, because none of that is really about discipleship. None
Whoa!
of it. It's just not. That's not. I mean, I guess here's the question that I would ask. Are you satisfied with what you know of God, and are you satisfied with the life you have with him? If you have the opportunity now to be living with the one you're going to be living with for all eternity, and knowing as much as there is to know about his heart's desire and his character and his ways, and to get to advance his kingdom purposes as far and much as possible in this lifetime. Like, are you satisfied that all of that is happening to its absolute maximum in your life right now? If the answer is yes, then great, because I don't know how to disciple you anyway. So, but if there's an ache, if there's a gnawing sense that there's got to be more to this discipleship thing than checking off boxes and dropping, some extra change in the plate or whatever the formula has been, there's got to be more. Like, right? It's got to be more than this. This can't be it. This radical life that Jesus died to give me has to be more than this. And you're right, it is more than that.
My church got a letter. The boys on the session got a letter about a year ago from one of the women in our church. Very thoughtful letter, very sharp letter. And the gist of it was this, and I'm gonna pitch the dilemma of what do you do about this to you in just a minute. But here's basically what the letter said. Guys, don't leave us as women behind. Remember us. Bring us along in the process of this community of believers. And where do we go from here? Carmen?
There may be something generational going on in this conversation. There may be something going on in this conversation in terms of marital status, married and single, because I see women in significant roles of what I would describe as leadership. I mean, in terms of authors and speakers and podcasters and influencers and people in ministry leadership who are women. And so if that's not being reflected and duplicated at the congregational level, then there probably is something that those who are in formal positions of leadership, the pastor and the elders or the session or whatever it's described as, the board of deacons, they should probably be paying attention to. And that's not to say that I'm advocating for, women being in ordained positions of leadership in churches where that's not affirmed. For anybody that knows my story, I'm like, I've been there, I've done that. I see no value in it. And I'm a whole lot more free as a layperson than I ever was as a person who's ordained.
Well, and I would ask them too, how do you feel excluded? How do you, can you articulate? I like the idea about sitting down, having a chosen watch party and look at how women were included in Jesus's ministry. I mean, in the first part of Luke 8, he talks about, names all these women, and they were critical to Jesus's ministry. They served Jesus, and they did so gladly, and they provided for him out of their means. And it was a big deal. It was a big part of Jesus's ministry. So I wonder sometimes, though, if women, and it, yeah, maybe it's a generational thing, maybe it's a cultural thing. If they're not saying, well, we want to be on a par, we want to be on the same level, we want to, we want that recognition or whatever, instead of, I want to do what God's calling me to do. And do you feel repressed in that in any way? Is your church saying, no, you can't be a Titus 2 woman and teach the younger generation and help the younger generation to do all of those things? Or do you feel left behind because you're not getting noticed for things like men are? I don't know if your church has only male elders, and maybe they don't like that, and they think that women should be elders or whatever. But I do think some of that comes from our culture, even within the church, where there's got to be this equality of, well, if you've got a man doing this, then you need a woman doing this. And I disagree with that. I think that if we're looking at what God's called us to do and God's told us to do, I think churches and church leadership need to foster that and fan that flame. But if that's not happening in your church, which I don't think it's not happening in your church, then there's a problem. If women are being repressed and told, well, you can't do that. You can't disciple, or you can't do this with this group of women.
I'm so very impressed with the conversation you two have just led us through, in the absolute non-tension that you live with in something that has become an emotive maelstrom with so many people, right? If I can't have this job, if she wants that job, then there's got to be just stupid and quarrelsome arguments, and on we go. And I'm really impressed that both of you have been there, done that. You realize that this is in a way, it's silliness, but it has a great deal of amperage in the system. So I want to, first of all, thank you both for your role in your ministry in this. And I want to get back to this withing idea from this standpoint. If you were speaking to an audience of 1,000 women who scatter across the age of 20 to 80 right now, and they are believers in Christ, and they are sitting in this room and they're trying to listen to you, and they're going like, I've never heard the withing. What do you want me to do? What do I do tomorrow morning starting at 8 a.m.? How do I get this launched? Am I supposed to be under someone or grab someone, or what do you want me tangibly to do from here? Would you two give us a bit of an art rendering of what the art of withing might look like for some youngers and some olders tomorrow morning who want to know withing?
Sure, I'll go first. So I'm so glad you introduced a different preposition in there to this conversation, because with is a preposition. And so this is not a pronouns conversation. People want to talk about preferred pronouns in relationship to identity. We want to talk about being with Jesus. We want Jesus to be the centerpiece of the conversation. And this is a conversation about being with him. So we want to be walking with other people who want to be walking with Jesus. All right. So if you think about it that way, then it's not necessarily that you need a mentor. It's that people are on a journey of discipleship with Jesus, and some of them are a little ahead of you, and some of them are a little behind you. And so you want to be walking with somebody who's a little ahead of you, right? And you also want to be walking with somebody who's a little bit behind you, right? And so we're all together with one another, moving in the same direction. And for certain stretches of the journey, you want to be trying to keep pace, accelerate toward that person who's a little ahead of you. And then in other times, you want to kind of hold back, like, right? You want to be the person who walks with somebody the stretch that you have just traversed. And so this isn't about being under or being over. I'm so glad you brought those words up because they do come up in this conversation. I think that the best image that I have, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but it's me. So if you do, it's okay. Um, if you've ever had a dog, if you've ever had a dog, you know that one of the commands related to a dog is the command with me. And you issue the with me command when either the dog is in danger or you are recognizing that the dog is about to get distracted by something. And so the with me command means come right up here alongside me, touch me, walk with me, keeping step for step. That's my image of what we want to be inviting people to do with Jesus. And so we want to be with Jesus in that way, inviting other people to be with him in that way, because he knows what's ahead. He knows what's coming. He knows what we're facing. And so that's really the invitation. There's nothing particularly revolutionary about what we're talking about. And yet there just aren't very many people who are approaching discipleship in this way. And I think it's the way to do it.
Yeah, to that question of what would I say, like, okay, so how do I start this with thing? To Carmen's point, we can't be with anyone else before we're with Jesus. So if Jesus is central to the whole witness thing, then we have got to make sure that our withing with Jesus is happening, and that we can't just go out and start discipling women and being with them. You got to stay close to the source. You got to stay connected to the source, so that you have something to provide when you're with these people, women. I think it starts there. Make sure that your relationship with Jesus is happening, and that it's vital, and that it's the first thing, and not just one of a few things you do every once in a while, but it's the main thing. Because I think that is absolutely true. People want to be with people who have been with Jesus, and it should be recognizable in us, like it was with Peter and John, I think, when they said, we recognize these people had been with Jesus. And I think that is what attracts women to Carmen or to me. We can't take any credit for it. It's just that we had our butts in the chair in some time alone with Jesus before we ever got with somebody else that day or that week. So the first thing is make sure that your relationship with Jesus is happening, and you pray and you ask him for what he's already told you he wants you to do, which is to go and make disciples. So send me somebody who needs to be with you, and the two of us can walk together with one another, and I can put my arm around her and help her to know you and love you and follow you. I love John Mark Comer's teaching on practicing the way, and I love how he spends so much time on the rabbinic way of disciple making, which is the apprentice is really the closest thing. It's not mentoring, it's apprenticing, with this rabbi, and you get through Hebrew school, and a rabbi notices you've got something special, and they pick you to be with them. And you're with that rabbi for 3 years, and you go where he goes, you eat what he eats, you sleep where he sleeps, you carry his bags, and there's a blessing that I don't know, they actually pray over it, but there's the blessing of may you be covered in your rabbi's dust, meaning you're following so closely with someone, you're with them so closely that you're just covered in the dust of their sandals. But that's how you learn. To go back in the beginning to what Carmen was saying, that's how we learn, and how that becomes incorporated in our life is by being in that close witness. And so if someone's not having that kind of a relationship with Jesus, it's going to be harder to disciple. So that's the first thing, is making sure that relationship is happening.
Punky, you've got a podcast, Life on Life. Talk to us about it. How do we get in touch with you? How do we creep your world so we can connect if there are women who want to talk to you?
Okay, if I've got a website, punkytolson.com. I do have a podcast. That podcast came about solely as another way to disciple women on a certain level, and talking about real life things, and just things that I actually hear from women that I disciple, and speaking to those things. I write a weekly message, and then I do one-on-one disciple making and small group disciple making with some young women that I have on Wednesday nights. But the best way is punkytolson.com, or you can listen to the podcast prior to taking a break from that, and that'll be on hopefully in the next few months.
So as Punky's been talking, you've seen on the screen, folks, Punky's website and her address, so you can chase down what she's up to. But this is a disciple maker who is working in a withing world with people. What a great thing to be connected with you. Punky, thanks for being with us today.
For having me. It's been fun.
Carmen, as always, how wonderful. But because people are curious, how do we get into your world with the Reconnect and CarmenLaBerge.com? Talk us through that.
Yeah, so the website, CarmenLaBerge.com, is absolutely the easiest place to connect in. I do a monthly newsletter. That's just for people. You have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, but that's really where I do, I would say, like the one-on-one version that goes out to everybody. And then every day on air on the show, we are having these kinds of conversations. We're just doing so across a wide variety of subject matter areas and with a number of different people. But folks could tune in to the show. You can check it out as a podcast. I mean, it's repurposed 100 different ways. So CarmenLaBerge.com is the best place to just find all of it, and all my social medias are there as well.
Carmen, thanks for being with us today on the Disciple Dilemma.
Love it. Thanks so much. I've loved this.
Would you help the church think more about discipleship? Would you help us get the conversation started to talk about the biblical discipleship Jesus gave us? Please follow us. Our website, www.thediscipledilemma.com. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and all the RSS feeds. If you'd follow or like us, you'll help us get leverage in the digital marketplace to talk about the fact that discipleship needs to be talked about. And as always, folks, thanks for listening.